Mac, one of the things we've talked about over and over again is that we hear pastors say, hey, we need more leaders like yesterday, but we can't hire from within. So let's maybe start today with, where should we start maybe from today in the next 90 days? Like, how would you frame the journey on helping these pastors begin?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming when you look and you have this massive vision for what you want your church to do. You know that God wants you to have an impact in your community. And I tell people all the time, the bigger the vision you have, the more leaders you have to have. And if you can't get leaders, it's an anchor on your vision. And so we need more leaders who are highly committed, who are skilled and can have the ability to lead other people. And so it's so important. And so Gary, I say to get it started, you have to get a picture of your current reality. You just got to get a picture of your current reality and say, okay, let's be honest. Where are we? Where are we right now? And what I would say is a lot of people can't determine where they're at with leadership development because they don't have a structure in which to measure it against and to evaluate against. And so I think it all starts, and we'll be talking about this when I'm there in November. It all starts with, okay, what is the structure that I need in place in order to have the impact that God wants me to have? When we planted Carolina Forest Community Church years ago, I picked a number. I was like, okay, I want us to be at 300 within the first 2 years. And so what we did before we ever launched, we built a structure for 300. I knew we weren't going to be 300 from day one, but I wanted to build a structure for where we were going, not where we were. If I built a structure for where we were, I'd built a structure for 20 people, and so I had to build for the vision and a structure for the vision. And that's where Leadership Pipeline comes in. And so let me just share something with you real quick. Every organization, every church needs a pathway to develop leaders. And basically, and I'm going to show you how Jesus modeled this when I'm there. We might touch on it a little bit here as well. But down here, this is the largest pool of people in your church. They're leading themselves. They're in a small group. They're in a class. They're serving on a team, but they're not leading anything. And it's from those group of people, some people flow up and those become your leaders. That's your small group leader. That's your children's leader, your student leader. It's your worship leader. It's your guest service leader, missions leader. Some of those flow up and they lead leaders. Now I've got some volunteers, like a 1-to-5 ratio. I can have one of these leaders leading these leaders, 5 of these leaders. And now I'm really getting a healthier structure. And then some of those flow up and they lead a ministry area. And then some of those can flow up and lead the church. And so this is what's called the leadership pipeline. And it's important because what you don't want to allow people to skip steps. When you skip steps, it undermines their development. So we had a small group leader one time when I was at Seacoast. We had a small group leader. He was a great small group leader. We decided to make him a campus pastor. we skipped 2 levels with this guy, and he never could get it. He struggled and struggled and struggled, and it was our fault, not his fault. And so what you'll see over here is when I look at this, I go, this level, we're discipling believers. At this level, we're discipling leaders. And this level, you're discipling a church planter. This is how you raise up church planters from within your church. And so these levels are really, really important. And so what you want to do is you want to label these. And so you can label this team member, leader, coach, director, senior leader, something like that. And then you lay out a chart like this with your various ministries across the top and your levels over here to the left, and you just plug in every single ministry that you need to run your church. Now, we did this when I started Carolina Forest Community Church. We put a chart together. It's long before I ever built Pipeline, but I knew enough to put a chart together and said, okay, if we're going to launch this church and we're going to have 300 people one day, how many positions do we need for 300 people? If 300 people showed up today, what would we need? We need this many children's volunteers. We need this many children's leaders. We need a couple of children's coaches. We need a children's director in order to run that. And so it gave us clear picture of where we were headed. I heard about this one guy. He said, "Oh, we're going to be 1,000 one day," and he built a chart for 1,000. And he took his small little team and made everybody put their names in the chart. And he said, "Now you know where to replace yourself." In a small team, but it's building for that future. And so, so that gives you a structure to work with, because you'll never know your current reality unless you are structured for what you need and where you're headed. And so, Gary, I'd launched the church. We were growing and things were going well, but we didn't quite have enough leaders. And I go to the football game one Friday night, high school football game. I'm the chaplain, and so I'm on the sidelines, and the coach, he's frustrated because we're getting beat. And he takes a laminated piece of paper out of his pocket, and he looks at it, and he flips it over and looks at it. Then he throws it, and it floats out on the field. I didn't know what it was. And so I run out on the field. I grab the laminated piece of paper, and I hold it up, and I look at it. I flip it over. And Gary, it changed my ministry. I'm going to show you. And so I went, oh my goodness. The laminated piece of paper looked like this. Had his offense, every position, and everybody could play that position. Had his defense, special teams, all the positions, who could play those positions. So I went back to my staff. I took that thing, I Xerox copied it, passed it out to my staff, had 3 staff. I said, I need your depth chart by the end of the week. And nice. So I had no clue our current reality. So they brought me the names of their team members, their leaders, the various roles. They brought me those. And I said, all right, every month we're going to do an update. I want to do an update every month. I want to see who's moving up. I want to see how short you are in your volunteers. I want to see how well you're doing moving people up. Gary, I guarantee every pastor on this call, I guarantee they get a budget report every month. But how many of us get a people report?
It's good.
Question, which one's the more important asset? The more important asset is your human resources.
That's right.
And if we managed our money the way we manage our people, we'd go bankrupt. All right, so let me show you. So here's what my guys did. They brought it back. I said, all right, I want to see it. And so here's, well, it won't it won't go. There we go. So this is just a couple of examples, but like guest services. Here's all the team members. Here are the leaders. Here's the coordinator. Here's the director. In student ministry, here's the team members. Here are the leaders. Here's the coordinators. Here's the director. And so all of a sudden, it gave me a snapshot of the depth of my team, and I had a current reality. Now, here's the thing, and I'll let you get to another question. Here's the thing. What happens is because we don't have picture current reality and we don't know our numbers, we guesstimate. And guesstimation stirs up an emotion, and usually we over guesstimate, which raises our emotions, our anxiety. I see it all the time. In smaller churches, they guesstimate in volumes of 5. How many leaders you need? I need 5 more. In larger churches, you ask them, how many more leaders you need? We need 10. We need 20. We need 30. They're just guessing. So right. I was on site with a church one time, and I saw one of the I think it was small group director. He was stressing out. Man, what's wrong? He said, I need so many more leaders. I need so many more leaders. I said, okay, well, let's do the math. Let's do the math. What are you talking about? I said, come here, sit down with me. All right. And we start running the numbers. And he had 10 small group leaders, 120 people coming to groups, or, something like that. And they were growing by 10%. And I said, all right, let's look at this. I said, do you know how many new leaders you need based on the ratios? You need 2. You're stressing out. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it right now. Give me 4 names of prospective small group leaders. And we sat there and talked about it. Boom, he got them. He was, and then all of a sudden, because he got a picture of current reality and what he should be shooting for, that was reality, and it wasn't as bad as he thought. But we just don't take the time to do that.
Yeah, it's so good. It almost sounds like, just I want to emphasize this point, because it sounds like, that people have to start with with who they have, not who they wish they had. That's kind of what you're saying. You got to start with like what's in front of you.
You got to start with what's in front of you. You got to take God gave you those people for a reason.
Yeah.
And we don't look at what we have. We look at what we wish we have. And then we make this mistake. We hire too quick. Hire too quick. And I know some of you can't hire, but you wish you could hire. But it's not always the solution. There are 6 reasons we hire too quickly. All right. Number 1 is guilt. It's guilt. You got a long-term volunteer. They've been serving. They've been leading. They give so many hours, and you start thinking, "Oh gosh, I need to pay them. I need to pay them." And all of a sudden you go, "Hey, you know what? We need to pay you." And you're just doing it out of guilt, not out of calling. Second reason is ministry partiality. Sometimes pastors, they favor this ministry over here. So they'll go, I love worship. Oh, I love worship. So they start hiring in worship when they really don't need to. It's just they're partial to that ministry. Third reason's friendship. You got your buddy, and he dreams with you. He visions with you. Go, man, I need you on staff. What do you want me to do? I don't know, man. I just need you on staff. And boom, we strike him a check and we hire him. And a few months later, you regret it. The fourth reason we hire too quick is we ignore healthy ratios. When I was over all our campus pastors at Seacoast, one of the big things, they would come to me and go, Mac, I need to hire somebody. I need to hire somebody. I said, let's look at your ratios. And we'd look at the ratios and I go, you don't need to hire anybody. You need 1 more coach, or you need 2 more coaches. You don't need to hire anybody. Let's go find 2 volunteer coaches, put them in place. That'll solve your problem. And then 5th is desperation. And we hire too quick because we're desperate. We're desperate. I mean, oh my gosh, we're feeling the pain. And then the last one is assumed growth. Sometimes we go, well, I think we're growing. We seem to be growing, so we don't really process it well enough, and we hire too quickly for that reason sometimes.
I'm laughing because I think you've hit every single thing I've stepped into during 25 years of ministry.
Yeah, well, that's how I know them.
Oh man. Well, I've heard you talk a lot about, just through your writing, culture before structure. And so you often say that culture precedes strategy. And so what would you say are the top 2 culture shifts a church must make to become a leader developing church?
Yeah, great question. I would say shift number 1 is you have to see leadership development as discipleship.
Yeah.
Leadership development is discipleship. I was on site at a church one time and I was teaching, the leadership pipeline. And after my first session, there was a grumpy guy sitting on the front row. And so I went to the pastor. I said, man, did I say something wrong? I mean, what, man, this guy, give me the evil eye, And he said, oh, just ignore him. He thinks leadership development doesn't belong in the church. I said, well, I'm getting ready to show something in the next session that's probably going to rock his world and flip that upside down. Now, I'm not going to go into this deeply with you guys because we'll do it when I'm there. But I do want to show you something, okay? So in order to really shape a culture, you need to see leadership development as discipleship. So let me just show you this. This is the chart that I'm going to be sharing with you when I'm there. It's the chronological order of Jesus' public ministry. So I've got it laid out 26 through 30 AD, winter, spring, summer, and fall. Now, real quick, what I want to show you, whoops, this keyboard is being finicky. What I want to show you is that Jesus came on the scene here. This is his baptism, his temptation, and he meets 5 of what would become his apostles, not 12. He met 5 of them, okay? He builds relationship with them over a period of time. He visits them in Capernaum, but then he goes back to Nazareth. They stay in Capernaum. And then he does his early Judean ministry right here in 27 AD, goes back down to Jerusalem. These guys aren't with him. And then Jesus moves to Capernaum right here. And then shortly after that, he says to Peter, James, Andrew, and John, come follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. Begins to disciple some of these guys for about 9 months. Now, look at this. 21 months into Jesus' public ministry, he goes on a mountain and he prays all night, comes down the next morning, and Luke tells us that all his disciples, calls all his disciples together, and from among them he chose 12. He chose 12. And he chose them to be his apostles. And over the next 6 months, and I'm not going to go into this right now, but over the next 6 months, he does intense apprenticing with these guys. Now, what I want you to notice in this 6 months, in the events of what Jesus did, his 12 apostles, they're not doing anything. They're not healing anybody. They're not teaching. We don't see any of that right here. All right. He appoints them, he trains them, and then right here, 6 months later, he says to them, he calls them together, and he gives them authority and power and sends them out 2 by 2 on a Galilean tour. And so now he selects, trains, and empowers. That's his process. Now he's giving them empowerment, power, and authority. He's telling them to go preach. He's telling them to heal. He's telling them to cast out demons. But he did not do that over here. He had to train them how to do it first. And so to me, when you look at this, what's happening, he taught these guys to live like him, and now he's teaching them to lead like him, because he's like, okay, now you're going to be apostles. Okay. And one of the words for apostle, it was used of an admiral of a ship. A king would send an admiral of a ship out to explore the coast and find unconquered territories, pull up in that place that had not been colonized, get off the boat with a crew, and take the lumber and build a colony that was reflective of the culture of the king. So when I think about apostle, it's culture shaper. So he's telling these guys, all right, I'm going to, and we'll dive into this when I'm there, but man, I'm going to teach you how to heal. I'm going to teach you how to preach. I'm going to teach you how to have influence with people. I'm going to teach you how to cast a kingdom vision. If you study that 6 months, that's what he's doing. He's teaching them to lead, because he wants them to do what he's doing. What's he doing? He's leading. So we need to teach. Yeah, I think the church does a decent job. We teach people to live like Jesus. We don't teach them and disciple them to lead like Jesus. Yeah. And so if we want to make an impact, we got to change that in our culture and help people see leadership development as discipleship. Second thing, you got to change. You got to stop being allergic to systems. You got to stop being allergic to systems. Again, we'll go into it when I'm there, but I can show you throughout Scripture where a spiritual problem happened in the history of Israel, and God we'll take Moses, okay? There was a spiritual problem. Moses was burning out, okay? God sent Jethro over there. Now, notice what Jethro did not say. Jethro did not say, Moses, you need to read your Torah more. Moses, you need to pray more. Moses, you need to share your faith more. No. He's like, Moses, you better put a structure together, because structure is God's solution to the spiritual problem that you're experiencing. And I'm going to tell you something. Here's what I see with pastors all the time. We think we have to be available to everybody. Mm-hmm. Now, I want you to think how egotistical that statement is. I know it can sound like servanthood, but it also can sound very egotistical. Mm-hmm. Well, they need me. And when I read the book of Ephesians, he said God gave apostles, pastors, prophets, teachers, evangelists to do what? Be available to everybody. No. To equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. And so we have to have systems in place to develop people, to help things run smoothly, so that we can be more effective and efficient. We have to think of ourselves not just as servants, but as stewards. We get the servant part. Man, I want to be available to everybody. I want to love on everybody. And that's good. I want to have compassion for everybody. And I'm not saying 100% of the time. Listen, I got guardrails on my calendar, but there are plenty of times I'll look at my assistant and say, I'll meet with that person. Yeah, man, I'll meet with them. It's not It's not a law, it's a guideline. It's principles that I follow in my system to help me bring, to help me steward my time that God's given me and steward the gifting that God's given me. I believe there's so many pastors out there who are frustrated, burnout, and desperate because they're not stewarding the gifts that God's given them. They're not stewarding it. They're, they're using themselves and burning themselves out instead of stewarding that which God's called them to be. And so it requires some systems. And you know, I know not everybody on here has an assistant. You can recruit a volunteer one, but mine's only 10 hours a week. But I've given her guidelines to say, here's how I want my schedule to run. Here's how I want to prioritize meetings. Here's how you can help me guard that. And Gary, one of the biggest things, I've done this for years now. You can't get on my calendar through me, because you know what? One of our systems, one of my rules, I'm not allowed to put anything on my calendar. If I want to get a haircut, well, I don't get a haircut anymore. But if I want something on my calendar, I have to give it to my assistant, and she does. And you know what that does? I was just teaching this to a young church planter the other day. He's got a part-time assistant. I said, use a system, let your assistant do all your scheduling. And all you do is look at people and say, hey, listen, I used to do it myself. And when I did, I double booked myself all the time. I would frustrate people. I'd forget to get back with people. And you know what? That's her gift. She's so good at that. And I want to honor her. And I don't want to mess up her system. And every time I put something on my own calendar, I mess up the system. Please reach out to her, or I'll have her reach out to you, and she'll make sure that we can figure out what you need.
Yeah, no, it's so good. So like what a lot of pastors, I would say, like from what I'm hearing, a lot of pastors almost have like that hero pastor culture versus the shared responsibility. And that sounds like what you were pressing into.
Yeah, Gary, I was in Scotland, and I'm teaching these pastors, you know, how to empower and delegate and leadership pipeline and fill in your pipeline. And I was about 45 minutes into this talk, and I could tell they were looking at me funny and whispering to each other. And what are they talking about? It's finally, I went, hey guys, please tell me what's going on. I feel like, you know, everybody in the room knows what's going on but me. You know, what are you guys talking about? What are you thinking? They went, Mac, if we did what you said, we'd be fired. If we didn't show up to the hospital, if we sent somebody else to the hospital, or if we refused to do this, or if we stopped teaching Sunday school, we'd be fired. I went, oh, wow. All right, I got a question for you. Do you want to build your church based on cultural norms or biblical principles? Because what you just described to me is a cultural norm. That's the expectation of the people, but it is not the description of what the New Testament says we should be doing. Yeah. And so a lot of us are building our church based on cultural norms instead of biblical principles. So we have to teach our people. Hey, let's look at what the biblical principles are of what a church is. What a church is. So many people have defined it culturally. It is so distant from the reality of what a biblical church should be.
Wow. So I want to jump into something else, talking about, I'm not even sure, I'm going to make a word up. You ready? It's called right sizing. It's dictionary, but we're going to make it up here. So right sizing the pipeline, whether you have a small or lean team. So my question is, how do you kind of right size a leadership pipeline when staff and volunteers wear multiple hats?
Yeah. Okay. If we'll tackle this a couple of ways. If you have a staff member who's wearing multiple hats, what you want to do is you want to prioritize where they're going to focus their leadership development efforts. Here's what I've learned. Let's say that you've got somebody on your team who oversees groups and guest services. I'm going to look at them and I'm going to say, okay, let's put the structure in place for guest services, but I don't care if you're doing leadership development there or not. Let's get leadership development going in groups so that we're discipling more group leaders and group coaches. All right. So let's just prioritize that. This can limp along, you know, you got to manage it. You know, it's your job. You got two hats. You got to manage this one. But my leadership development expectations are only going to be on this side. Here's, from what I understand, if you show a lion a three-legged stool, it paralyzes them. I'm not willing to try that out, but that's what I've heard. And the same thing happens if you put a staff member over 2 to 3 ministries, it paralyzes them, and they're not effective at moving all 3 forward. But we have to do it sometimes. But I would help prioritize those for them. In the leadership pipeline, if you've read Multiplication Effect or you're trying to build a leadership pipeline, here's the other thing I would say to answer that question. I always tell people, hey, focus on these 6 key areas. All right. Your adult groups, your children's ministry, and your student ministry. Focus on those 3 plus worship, and then outreach, and then guest services. So when you're focusing on leadership development, and maybe you're a smaller church of 80 people, gosh, we can't do all 6 of those areas. Just write down those 6, prioritize them, take one at a time. Take one at a time. You got plenty of time, so don't knock yourself out. It just take one at a time and get wins and build it in one, and then move to the next one and build it in that one. And so that's what I would say on that. The second thing on volunteers, just be careful. We tend to abuse people who are willing. All right, so let me give you this analogy, all right, or this story. So let's say you got the Smith family. Smith family comes to your church. You love the Smith family. They're dedicated. They're there every Sunday, by the way. And Mr. Smith, he's in 2 positions in your church. He holds 2 different roles. And Mrs. Smith, she holds 4 different roles. She does 4 different things in your church. And they're 2 teenagers. They hold 2 to 3 each as well. And so, my goodness gracious, I mean, this family, they're so valuable. We love them for everything they do. Now, all of a sudden, they get called away. They move to California. I didn't lose 4 people. I lost 11 or 12 positions.
Yes.
That's a vulnerability most churches are not aware of that they have. And so this is why, again, we got to look at current reality. So I went to Frances in my church years ago. I was about 40 and she was like 60 something. And I said, Miss Frances, I owe you an apology. She said, darling, you don't owe me an apology. What do you want to apologize for? I said, Miss Frances, you are a thoroughbred leader. And I'm using you like a work mule. You're in 7 different roles in this church, and you're volunteering about 10 hours a week. Miss Frances, I want you to choose a primary and a secondary, and the other 5 become my problem. I'll figure them out. All right. I want you to keep those 10 hours a week, but I want to see you use your strengths and giftedness in a primary and a secondary. She chose children's church, and she chose her women's small group. She revolutionized our children's church. I mean, it grew exponentially under her leadership because we focused her. And that's what we need to do. Now, last thing I'll say on this. You need to audit your volunteer stress load. We don't think about this, okay? Now, from what I understand, national average of people volunteering is around 30%. That number is going up, by the way. And so that's good news. Most recent surveys show that number is beginning to go up. So that's good news. But about 30% people volunteer. And so if I have, and that includes, let's include your middle schools and high school. Okay, we'll include those in that number. If I have 100 people attending my church, then that means, I'm probably going to have about 30 people volunteering. And I know that 30% of the church, which is another 30 people, are students and children. And so if I have 100 people, that means I got probably around 65 to 70 adults, and I got about 30 some of those volunteering. And I want more than that. And a lot of times in smaller churches, you do get bigger numbers. You get more around 50%. That's good. But then here's what we do. Our Sunday morning, so you calculate how many people you have, what percent are serving. Next thing you do is you write down all the positions that are needed to pull off every ministry you do. Okay, and this is what I see a lot. So how many people are needed to pull off your Sunday morning children, Sunday morning worship, Sunday morning guest services. How many people are needed to run your adult ministry? How many people are needed to run your outreach ministries? All the different outreach ministries. How many people are needed for guest services? I don't know if I said that. How many people are needed? Now you're adding Wednesday night children's programming, Wednesday night adult programming. You're adding Celebrate Recovery, which, oh, by the way, they need to have a band and all this. Now, all of a sudden, you calculate, and Gary, I've done this. I've done it multiple times, and I've seen this. You calculate it up, how many positions are needed, and not just positions, but like if in a church of 100, I'd want at least 5 small group leaders. Okay, so I don't need 1, I need 5. Okay, and so I calculate it up, and it's like we don't even have enough people to cover all these positions.
Right.
It's impossible. We have out-programmed the number of people that we have, and it's impossible to meet those needs. And I was working with a church one time, poor children's lady, she was stressed out, and I was helping her run the numbers and figure out how she could get 20 more leaders. And this was right after COVID. It was in 2021. And we worked through her numbers, and I felt good about it. I said, here's your plan to get your 20 more leaders. That's not going to be easy, but here's your plan. Here's how you can do it. You feel good about that? She went, no. I went, but I just showed you how. Why? She went, because we stopped Wednesday night children's program during COVID, but I have to start it back up in 8 weeks. I said, whoa, you didn't tell me that part. How many more leaders you need there? I need another 25. Went, you mean to tell me you need 50 new people in 8 weeks? She went, yeah. And this church isn't that big. I said, I don't see how you're going to do it.
Right.
Pastor looked at me and went, I said, I've never seen that done. And the pastor went, we'll be the first.
Oh, no.
And I thought, that was a foolish statement, because he refused to look at reality. And the poor girl, she's stressed out because he's just wringing her out as much as he can. More volunteers, more volunteers. And the problem isn't they don't have people to volunteer. The problem is they've overprogrammed for the amount of people they have.
That's right. Wow, that's powerful. Let's talk about that a little bit. So like, talk about like maybe spotting emerging leaders. So with different people on the call, talk to the church leader of maybe that smaller church that says, we don't have a leader. Like, so what traits, what signals would help you spot an emerging leader already who's in the room in your church?
Yeah, we got to stop looking at people for what they are and start looking at them for what they could be a year from now if we develop them and if we pour into them. All right. So it's a switch of mindset. So fascinating. When Jesus recruits Matthew to be a disciple, what's Matthew doing? He's sitting at a tax collector booth.
Right.
And tax collectors were like, notoriously bad, but he was worse. There's Gabbai tax collectors and there's Moki's tax collectors. Gabbai tax collectors, they had a set price that they would charge, percentage they would charge for the Roman government for tax. Moki's tax collectors, they ran the ports and they would charge whatever they wanted. They were the most corrupt of the corrupt, And Jesus goes up to him. Wow, by the way, Matthew's sitting at the port in Capernaum collecting taxes. There were like 16 different docks in Capernaum where these ships would come in, and Matthew just making bank, he's doing well. And Jesus goes up to him and said, hey, I want you to follow me. Matthew was willing. Was he ready? No, he wasn't ready. He was willing. We got to start looking for willingness, not readiness. And so here's what I look for. TIPS, tips. Yeah, teachability. Are they teachable? Integrity. Do they demonstrate integrity? Passion. Is there something they're passionate about? And then servant attitude. Do they have a servant attitude? Man, humility. That they have that, man, pour into them. I think we got to start looking younger, and we've got to identify people not for what they are, but what they can be. And so the potential's there. I really believe that God has given you the people that you need. We just got to develop them. And I was just in California, and I was speaking at an event for a church, and a church about 350 people, and they have these had a few 17, 15, 18-year-olds who did a summer internship through my book series. And they brought these young people in to meet me, and it was crazy. Gary, was crazy. I mean, I sat with a 15-year-old and just listened to the impact this internship had on her life. And not from a Christian home. She comes to church on her own. And at the end of the internship, she came to her pastor and she said, Pastor Nate, I feel like God's in ministry.
It's awesome.
It's because they were doing development with her and giving her opportunities to learn different roles in the church. And so we gotta look at people and go, okay, what could they be if we poured into them? And the second thing, we've got to have more I see in you conversations.
Yes.
When Jesus first met Simon, you know what he said? He said, hey, you know what, Simon? I'm going to call you Peter, which means rock. Now, it wasn't like Jesus meeting a redhead and say, hey, I'm going to call you Red. You know, that wasn't it. When a rabbi or a prophet renamed somebody, it was a prophetic statement showing them something that was in them that had not come out of them yet.
Yeah.
So it was prophetically speaking over him, showing him what he could become. And pastors, we got to do it. You've got a prophetic voice. You got a prophetic voice. When you speak life into people, they receive it so much heavier than from just the average person, because you represent that spiritual person in their life. And when you look at somebody and go, you know what I see in you, man, you'd be an incredible small group leader. My goodness, I watch how people respond to you. Gosh, I watch your character. I see a passion in your eyes. You know, you are so faithful. You're so loyal. You're always showing there's something in you. And I believe God is calling you to do more, and speak it into them. Call it out of them. Don't just sit and wait for it to come out of them. Call it out of them.
That's so good. That's so good. I want to piggyback off that a little bit. So maybe help some of our listeners online, like maybe help us by naming just a few like low risk roles that can surface faithfulness and teachability, kind of build on that.
Yeah. Gosh, I would say obviously your greeter ministry is massive opportunity for you to watch people, for them to serve and be a safe place. I think mission opportunities. Now, what I would do is I would mobilize mission opportunities through groups. I would decentralize mission opportunities rather than centralize them, so that they become your people living on mission, not the church planning the mission, but your people planning mission. And then tell your group leaders, hey, keep your eye open for people. Remember, do what Jesus did. He would take his disciples on a cross-cultural mission trip, and he would sit and he would debrief it with them. So challenge your group. Say, hey, I want you to plan some sort of outreach. Okay, I want you to go to the school and replant the garden. I want you to take your group over to school and do reading day. Or hey, I want you to go over to the community center and volunteer for the upcoming race. I want you to go to the football coach and say, hey, my small group, they want to work the concession stands. We don't want any money from it. We're not going to wear a church t-shirt. We just want to serve you. And then you watch what God does in the souls of those who are serving. And that's when you begin to recognize calling and leadership.
That's so good. That's so good. Wow, we've got like 20 minutes left. I think I got so much to cover still. Man, I got so many questions. So let's maybe move into like the simple repeatable systems. Let's talk about that a little bit. So if you could only install, let's say, 3 repeatable meetings or rhythms that rely on growing leaders, what are they, and then how would you run them?
Okay. Yeah. So what we teach in Leadership Pipeline is 3 types of training that you can do. Now, when you ask most pastors what's your leadership development strategy, they're going to tell you they don't have one, or theirs is organic, which means they don't have one. And so when I studied through the life of Christ chronologically, this is descriptive, not prescriptive, but when I studied through his life chronologically, I saw that he did a multifaceted approach to leadership development. He did individual development, he did team development, he did like organizational. All right. He prepared new leaders. That's getting them started. So what he did is he apprenticed a small group of men, and particularly Peter, James, and John. And so it's one on small. So what I would do, I'll give you this and then I'll show you what I would do. So that one on small prepares somebody to move from one level of the pipeline to the next. But then Jesus also would get his 12 together and he would facilitate discussion with them. And that was for ongoing development and team development. And he'd get them learning from each other and get some good discussion going. And then Jesus would get 4,000 to 5,000 people together and he would teach all day long. And the environment was so riveting that people wouldn't even leave to go eat. So prepare, equip, inspire. That's like a framework. Prepare gets them started to lead. Equip keeps them going. Inspire fires them up. Now, you put it together. And like I said, if you ask me, hey, Mac, what would you use as a leadership development strategy if you were pastoring a church today? I'd say, well, we prepare new leaders through apprenticing. We equip existing leaders through huddles, and we inspire all of our leaders through our Fuel conference by doing a conference once a year for all of our leaders. So it's apprentice, huddle, and conference. All right. So what that means is, I'll give you an example. So anytime, for years now, I've led a small group. When I have a small group, and it used to be couples groups, but then I've started doing men's groups, but I would identify 1 to 2 people in my group, and I'd say, hey, I think you got potential to be a small group leader. Can I apprentice you? Would you be willing to apprentice in the context of this group? I won't push you too hard. I just help you take your next step. And I'll get 2 people to say yes. And then I start walking them through, nowadays, walking through leading others so they learn the competencies of how to lead a small group, how to facilitate discussion, how to deal with difficult people. And they're learning it in the safe environment under my apprenticeship. All right. So I'm letting them practice here and there. I'm making them lead the prayer at times, making them lead discussion at times. I'm having them reach out to people who are absent and things like that, do soul care with them. And so I'm just apprenticing them over a semester. All right. So now I'm preparing a new leader. That's apprenticing. So let's say that I got Gary and John. All right. Gary and John, you're in my small group. I apprentice you for 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is. You're both ready. You both launch off and start your own small group. All right. Now, you're not under me anymore. You might be with me. All right. But we're under a coach. We got a small group coach. And that small group coach pulls us together once a quarter, just once a quarter, and does an ongoing development huddle with us. Shows us a little video on how to have a biblical community or something like that. And so, we discuss it, we learn from each other, and we do that so that we're continuing to get better in our leadership over the semester. And then once a year, we do a big leadership conference like the one I just spoke at. And at that one I spoke at, I talked about how to disciple leaders and just gave them a process for discipling leaders. And so it equipped them to go do that. So that would be what I would do.
Yeah. And so what would you recommend for our listeners that could maybe, if they're not in some type of coaching, they could step into some lightweight monthly huddle coaches on the job coaching training, like get into a loop or something like that. Like, what would you recommend?
For the existing leaders?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll show you real quick. I'll show you what whoops. So, for the, whoops, I lost my button. There it is. So, let's say I'll answer this 2 ways. All right. So let's say that for the, if I picked you and Gary and Gary and John, I picked Gary and John in my small group and say, hey guys, I want to meet with you every other week. And I'm going to show you something at the end of this webinar. And Gary, I'll give this to you so you can share it with these guys. But I would say, hey guys, I want you to read chapter 1 on how to make disciples. And let's get together and talk about it. And then I'm going to give you some assignments to practice that. But we're going to meet over the next semester, and I want you to just read chapter 1, Making Disciples, chapter 3, Leading Different Personalities, How to Facilitate Discussion, Empowering Those Around You, and Identifying Apprentice Potential Leaders. So you're only going to pick 5. We're going to pick 5 that are most relevant for that area of ministry. And so I'll walk you through these 5 over the semester. Now, you're learning how to make disciples in chapter 1, but you're also learning how to have compassion. So we're teaching you character and competency. So I'm discipling you as a leader in your character and competency. Every chapter, here's the objectives I'm going to try to accomplish with you in that chapter as I apprentice you. I'm going to have you do this little proficiency assessment that's in the chapter. You're going to score yourself and evaluate yourself, and we're going to talk about that so it helps you see where you need to grow. And so that's what I would do in the apprenticing. And then let me show you the huddle is pretty simple thing to do. And I'll show you what it looks like right here. Now, once I've taken you through leading others and I've launched you off to start your own group, now you got a coach that's going to be meeting with the 5 or 6 of us once a quarter, and they're going to do a huddle. And here's one on how to have a healthy team. So he's going to start the meeting off by saying, celebrate since last time we met, what's something you've seen God do in your life. And then we're going to go into the coaching section. What's the best team you've ever been a part of? What made it so good? Then we're going to watch this short little video, 2 minutes and 10 seconds on 5 dysfunctions of a team. Then we're going to discuss these questions together. And that coach is going to help us learn from each other as we discuss these questions. And then communicate. Hey, here's some important updates you need to be aware of in our small group ministry. You need to be aware of this, be aware of that. And then we pray together. And so that's what a huddle looks like. And so the green book I showed you, that you use that to apprentice a new leader to the next level. The huddle I showed you, you just sit and have a discussion with a handful of your leaders and just help them continue to grow in their leadership. Simple as that.
Yeah. Would you say that would be part of like even your coaching program? Like you have that in there where guys would come in and they would get coached that way from you with your team?
Oh, yeah. When we take churches through the leadership pipeline, we actually model all of this stuff for them so they get to experience it. And but yeah, we teach them, we give them the tools, we give them the resources, we give them the huddles, we show them how to use the books, and so that they can start developing leaders.
Let's talk about leading yourself without burnout, right? So from leading yourself from that book, what personal habits keep a pastor healthy enough to multiply leaders instead of micromanaging them?
Yeah, that's good. I love what 2 Timothy 1:11 says. Paul's talking to Timothy, and he said, for I was appointed to be a preacher, apostle, and teacher. All right, those 3 things. Paul knew his 3 things. He knew his 3 things. And so I think we need to know what are my top 3 strengths, and how does God want to use that in my life? And then empower other people to do the other things. I got to know what I'm good at. I got to know what is that only I can do, And I think more pastors need to learn empowerment so that they're truly empowering people to make a difference. And that's going to keep them from burning out. And but a lot of times what we do is we do delegation, but not empowerment. We say, hey, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. I need you to do this. And we're giving things away, but it boomerangs, okay? Because so I'll say, hey, can you, man, I want you to go paint that room. So they go to paint the room. They come back. Hey, what color do you want it? Blue. And then they come back. Hey, do you want it to be flat? Do you want it to be shiny? What do you shiny? And then they go back, come back. Hey, what type of brush you want me to use? That's not empowerment. It's like empowerment is, I want you to paint that room. I want you to make sure that it matches the brand colors that we have, and just make it the best it can be. Well, what do you want about this? you just do it, man. I trust you. I trust you to do it now, and give them that empowerment to do it. But man, I remember when I first became senior pastor, everybody was coming to me. Can I do this? What about this? What about this? How do you want me to do this? And I was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna wear me out. I got to learn to empower people. And so it took a while, but eventually learned to do that. And so it's not just giving away responsibility, it's giving away authority.
Yeah,
And that's a little scary for some pastors.
it is. It is. Talk about maybe call out some of those boundaries in joy credibility builders, I would say, when resources are thin.
Credibility builders.
Yeah, like call out some of the boundaries and resources. Like when resources are thin, and let's say your leader's not, I guess, managing well. They're like you just said, that everybody's coming to them. Like, so you just build on that a little bit. So I'm going to empower you. I trust you. I see you're going to be a great painter of the color blue on the wall. I know you can do it. Like, just talk about that. Like, how would you do that? Just set up that conversation.
Yeah. So I don't want to empower people right away. Leaders. I don't want to empower leaders right away. What I want to do is when I'm apprenticing them, they're learning here's the thing. When you're apprenticing them, you're developing their character, you're developing their competency, you're also developing their competence. Mm. And so you're spending time with them. Remember, in those 6 months where Jesus apprenticed those 12, he wasn't having them do a lot. Right. He didn't fully empower them yet. He was still training them. But in the training time, he was ensuring they were getting the right competencies and the right character trait. And then also understanding my core values. When I used to work for North American Mission Board, I was new, and about a year into it, I looked at my team and I said, okay, you know my values. Now that you know my values, I can trust you with the decisions, because I trust you to make the decisions through the lens of the values that we've, that I've shared with you. And so once I know somebody knows the values, I can entrust them with the decision. Now that takes time walking with them. And so, but if I just say, I had a guy at my church and he was on staff, and one of his volunteers came up to me one day and he said, "Hey, where's Tonka?" I said, "Tonka? Who's Tonka?" And he said, "Sean." I said, "Why do you call him Tonka?" It's because he's a Tonka truck. He backs up on you, he dumps a boatload of task on you, and he drives off. I don't want to be a Tonka, and so it requires time with people to ensure that their confidence, competence, and they understand the values, and then you empower them, and you just know they're going to do the right thing. And I'm talking about leadership empowerment, and not painting a room blue. I use it as an example, but it's like, hey, I want you to handle this parent problem. I want you to handle this situation. I want you to counsel this person, but I've trained you to do it, so I know I have the confidence that you can do it.
All right, let's shift the scoreboard a little bit. Here's the question. When bigger isn't the scoreboard, how do you measure the impact of leadership development?
Woo, good. When bigger isn't the scoreboard, how do you measure the impact of leadership development? Okay, so several things that I would say on this. Number one is, how many leaders do I have that are reproducing leaders? How many leaders are reproducing leaders? We don't think about that. We got to think multiplication, not just addition. And so what I tell churches is, I want 20% of my leaders reproducing leaders, 20% of my leading leaders reproducing leaders. And if you're on staff, 100%, you got to be doing it. Okay. And so, but that's one thing that I would measure today. If I was pastoring a church, I would ask myself on a quarterly basis, how many of our leaders are raising up new leaders? And if you have 20% doing that, that is strong. Okay. The second thing on the scoreboard is stories. This is so important. It's one of the main things I stress with churches that go through leadership pipeline, is once we get them in the implementation phase, I say, okay, now every other week at staff meeting, share success stories. because stories stick, stories spread, and stories shape culture. And whenever we take that staff and we say, okay, it's time to implement discipling leaders, Gary, some of them are terrified because they've never done it before. It's never been required of them. Now all of a sudden they're having to disciple 2 leaders and they're freaking out. And so you got to share success stories and so that it gains their confidence and they go, okay, and reminds them everybody else is doing this. Third thing is how many ministries are running by volunteers who feel fully empowered and act like owners. You know, when I planted my church, I had 7 key leaders, all volunteer, that oversaw 7 key ministries. And if they were constantly coming to me, that they're not fully empowered, they're not owners. Now I met with them one-on-one, some every 2 weeks, some every 3 weeks, some once a month, depending on their position. I met with them regularly, had them establish goals of what they were going to accomplish in their area ministry, that sort of thing, as volunteers, but they were empowered. But if they were coming to me constantly for decisions, that's not, I want that on the scoreboard, or my leaders leading like owners. And then as a pastor, rate yourself once a month. Do I feel like I'm working in the ministry or am I working on the ministry? Where am I spending my time? And if I'm not getting that right, then something's off on the scoreboard. And then the other thing I would put on the scoreboard is how many young leaders are emerging, 15 years old and up. Just like that church I was with in California, church of 350. They had, I forgot how many, but they had several high school students in a summer internship. And by the way, they didn't even accept them all. They, prior to the summer, they had to read Leading Yourself, show up ready to discuss it with the youth pastor on Sunday morning. And if they didn't complete the requirements, they weren't allowed to get in the internship. So it vetted out a bunch of them. And then the rest of them actually got to go through the summer internship. And so I love that. But that's some of the things that I would look for. And big thing is how many, I would add this one, how many disciple makers do we have? How many disciple makers do we have? Because what I'm discovering is most believers do not know how to make disciples. That's why chapter 1 of Leading Others, that's exactly why that chapter is chapter 1 of Leading Others. It's how to make disciples.
That's so good. That's so good. I'm also going to put up in the chat, you have a whole disciple making process too, which I think is very helpful. If people don't know, like disciplingleaders.com is a great website for people to check out too. So I'm going to throw that up there in the chat. So we're getting close to our time, but I got a couple more questions. Talk to the leader with dealing with how would you redesign Sunday and midweek so they're not just events, it's not so much programmatic, but they become training environments to produce and reproduce leaders.
All right, I don't want to step in too hard. Sunday morning, I think Sunday morning, we got to recognize that's probably still front door for a lot of people.
Yeah, correct.
And so, you know, preach and do what you're doing to try to help people take their next step with Jesus. Whenever I do a service, I always say at the end, what did God say to you today and what are you going to do about it? That's it. What is your next step? That's, to me, the definition of discipleship is helping someone take their next step spiritually. Okay, that's it. And so that's what I want to do on Sunday morning. But the thing I would change about it, I would make it more interactive. Our culture is heading that way.
Yes.
Every environment in the world today is interactive except church. I mean, it's just, it's so funny. But Wednesday night, if you're doing Wednesday night, here's what I would say. If you're investing in Wednesday night, man, I would go heavy and go, this is where I am developing my disciple makers. And guys, I'm going to do some teaching that's going to make you a better disciple maker, not a better head knowledge Bible knower. This is here to make you a disciple maker. And if you don't want to be a disciple maker, this is the wrong environment for you. Okay. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to do a little teaching, or somebody else somebody else can do some teaching. Okay. You should be raising somebody else to do that. Somebody else do the teaching. All right. 20 minutes, but then we're going to break into groups and we're going to have DNA discussion. Okay. Because I'm going to give you something to read every week, and some scripture, and what's the divine revelation that God said to you. Then nurture relationships. How are you doing really? You know, that type of question. And apostolic action. What apostolic action are you going to take this week to reach somebody who doesn't know Jesus, or help somebody take their next step spiritually? How are you going to be a disciple this week? And by the way, when we come back next week, you're going to report out in your triad what you did and how it went. And we're going to do some little testimonials. And then we're going to teach you something else that next week, how to make disciples, and just drive it until you build a disciple making culture among that group. They're the most faithful people, but
Yes.
sometimes they're also the most fat people that show up on Wednesday night. So let's get them exercising their faith so they can lose some of that spiritual fat and be lean, mean disciple making machine.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So here's my last question. I want to move from like just talk to traction, like you were talking about. So give us maybe a 30-day action plan a pastor can start Monday. I mean, it's Wednesday right now. So let's say we got a couple of days, get through the weekend. They could start Monday next week to kickstart leadership development. Like what would happen week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and so on?
All right, Gary, I knew this question was coming. And so I'm going to answer it this way.
Yeah.
All right. Here, yesterday, I designed a 12-week development kickstart plan for this group. All right. And so, Gary, I'll put it in a PDF and send it to you. Okay. And so what you're going to do, this gives a little instruction, but I'm going to jump down here. Okay. Week 1, order 3 to 4 copies of Leading Others, block out weekly times to gather a triad of people and relational check-ins. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Look through the table of contents of the book, and it's the one I showed you a while ago. Pick 5 chapters that you want to cover with those 2 to 3 participants, and I recommend choosing 2 of your best leaders. You'll see why in a minute. And then I recommend you at least do chapter 8, identify and develop leaders with them. Okay. Week 2, you're going to recruit potential 2 to 3 existing leaders, cast a vision for them. And what you're going to tell them is, hey, you're 2 of my best leaders. I want to take you through this so that you can start helping me disciple new leaders. That's why I'm taking you through this. Then share the roadmap, show them the chapters you want them to go through, give them the book. Week 3, you're going to meet and you're going to gather in your triad and you're going to discuss chapter 1, which is how to make disciples. You can use the leader guide to pick some questions to ask them and then give them an assignment for the next chapter that they're going to read 2 weeks later. Week 4, you're going to do a relational check-in. You're going to call them, you're going to text them, you're going to meet one-on-one with one of them for coffee, and just going to ask them what's standing out to them from the chapter, how they're applying it, relational check-in, encourage them, stuff like that. All right, week 5, you're going to do chapter 2. Week 6, relational check-in. Week 7, you're going to do the 3rd chapter. And then this rhythm continues until you get to week 12. And this is where you multiply. You finish the 5 chapters. You're going to challenge each participant to identify 2 emerging leaders in their ministry area. Take those leaders through this same 12-week process that you just modeled for them. If you do that, you just got, this is the power of this. You didn't get 2 new leaders because you chose existing leaders. So you and these 2 are now going to take 2 each, and now you're going to raise up 6 new leaders. And you do that again, and again, and there's a multiplication effect. And by the way, the bell curve of this goes like this. All right?
Right.
It's a bell curve because what happens at Pinewood Boulder, I took them through 150 people, took them through. Parker and his 4 volunteers went through the process. We got them started. Man, all 5 of them took 2 people each through Leading Others, and then they released those 10 to start raising up new leaders. So the bell curve's going like this. And then they did it again. And now 70% of the adults in their church have been developed as leaders. So your bell curve starts to go down because you're already developing so many people. You're not growing like this. So your development's not going to go like that. And so simple plan. And I don't know, the books are $12, $10, something like that. And Mike told me the other day, somebody said, yeah, I don't know if we can do that. I was like, you're not willing to invest $12 in a leader, then that tells me a lot about your commitment to discipleship, your commitment to growth, your commitment to your vision. If you're not willing to invest in leadership development, which is the primary thing where Jesus invested his time. In the last 24 months of his ministry, he invested majority of his time in leadership development. If we're not willing to invest in leadership development, then don't expect God to throw you a bunch of big leaders. Because if you don't steward what he gives you, he's going to steward it somewhere else.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I tell some of my leaders, I'm like, hey, if you can't afford $12, then stop going to Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks.
Exactly.
Wow, Mac, I just want to thank you so much for, I mean, we've been on this call like 90 minutes, and it's a bunch of great information. Again, you're going to get to hang out with Mac here at our Nexus conference with the BCNE. And so again, I'm going to put that up in the chat. Just go to the website, sign up. We can't wait to hang out with you. There's going to be so many great breakout opportunities. Mac's going to be our main stage speaker on Saturday, and we're just going to be really excited to have him. And so Mac, I want to thank you. I don't have any questions rolling in right now, but I just want to thank you so much for your time, and thank you for just investing in the BCNE and the New England leaders here. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I look forward to being there with you guys. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and we'll go a lot deeper on it.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you want to support our work in New England, you'll find a link in the description.